I'm Roy Reid. I'm co-author of the book, The Trust Transformation. I work with CEOs and leaders to build better trust in their relationships so that they get better results. And this is God's podcast.
I've been really blessed to have this opportunity to, meet with people and just really talk to people about some things that people in general, the business community or entrepreneurs in general, are not necessarily hearing about.
Yeah.
Because like me, as you were there when I was in college, and these are the things that people didn't talk about.
Right.
And I was part of the entrepreneurship club. I was the president of the club and all of this. So it's just like, I know for a fact this was not talked about.
Right. No, that's right.
And so, so it's, God has led me to create this opportunity to talk to business owners like yourself and people who have been a leader in the industry.
Yeah.
To understand how God works in your life and in your business. And that's the goal of this podcast, really to, shed some light on your experiences and your testimony of that itself. So, I guess to start off, for those who may not know you, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about, who Roy Reid is?
Awesome. I appreciate that. And first of all, thank you for having me on this morning. It's been fun in my journey to have been out at UCF in that role of communications executive director and work with so many students that now today, I won't say how many years later, but all these years later, everybody's out doing their thing. And the fact that you and I are both business owners and we're building our business and we share a strong commitment to bringing that faith into our businesses is really rewarding. And I'm proud of you, for the things that you've done, not just here but throughout. And we all we're tested and we develop that perseverance that helps us continue to move forward. And I know your work is going to impact and really speak to a lot of people right now. So
I just walk the walk.
Yeah, that's all we can do. So my story, I've been in the communications and public relations business and work for my entire career, which spans about 36 years now. I graduated from UCF back in a decade that you'll call the 80s, and then jumped into a small public relations firm that was a great experience because I kind of got to be a jack of all trades in that space with 2 or 3 other people. And then jumped into a role with Orange County Public Schools for a few years, did a little bit of an entrepreneurial stint with a few friends in between that. And then really what's come to define my career was that next move where I went to work for Advent Health at a small hospital that we were building into a community in southwest Volusia County. And in that experience, I really began to formulate in my mind the cornerstone of what's really become the message of my work and my life work, and that's trust. We came into a community that really needed the kind of help through the services we were going to provide, and yet there were pockets of that community where relationships had been broken. And so I had a great CEO who gave license for us to really dive into building and fostering and repairing and restoring relationships where that needed to be. I left that role and became a partner with a public relations firm where I spent the next 13 years working with clients, some small businesses, but a lot of big national brands too, like Walmart, CSX Transportation, Disney, and others. And then began formulating an actual model around trust. And the motivation for that was to help my clients understand that the outcome of your communication should always be to build trust or to improve trust where you have it. Then had the opportunity, I was approached by Dean Jarley, who had just gotten his job out at UCF, asked me if I'd come work for him. His goal was to transform the culture of the College of Business, which had become very let's say, transactional, people just sort of showing up, checking the box, and moving on. And what Paul's vision was is to make it more engaged and relational, where people would really foster the engagement both with faculty, with students, with partners, and pour into each other. You know, his famous saying, as you might recall, was real learning occurs when two people sit down and have a conversation together. And you and I got to experience that through the ambassador program and a lot of the events that were created back then that they still do today, like Welcome to the Majors. And it was really a magical time for me because I now had this model that I had developed in my agency world and now bringing it into the university world, which is a great laboratory to see. So I got to work with you guys. I presented it in our meetings, and I got to do it with some of the departments and really create this functioning idea, this call it a leadership model, operating system, if you will, on how to build, foster, repair, and restore trust. And, you know, like every other job I've had, there was a sort of a start and then a finish to it. And I reached a point where I knew there was something else that I needed to be doing with this idea that I had. And so I got a call from an old friend, another UCF Knight, but somebody I'd known really the majority of my professional lifetime. And he called and asked if I would come back to Advent Health. And there was an opportunity coming in there at a time where the organization was going through a big transition. And that transition was they were going to rebrand the organization. So historically, the holding company had been Adventist Health System, and now they were going to transform into their own name brand. So instead of a lot of hospitals around the country with different names, they were going to unify under one name. And thereby create something recognizable that as they acquired facilities, there would be an opportunity to go in and be able to offer the scaling that comes with one big organization. And they were also in the process of naming a new CEO. So jumped at the opportunity, going back to an organization that had poured so much into me and given me so much opportunity to grow, and now to join them at this great transitional point. So I got there, they named the new CEO, and my role as I was executive director of communications, and had responsibility when they went into this new organizational structure under Terry Shaw to manage the internal and the external communications team through this rebranding process and work on service standards and work on all of these things that would then become part of the operating structure for the organization. At the same time, they had an education group and a publishing group that I had introduced the trust information to. At the time, I called it outrageous trust. Mm-hmm. The idea being that if you're going to have one thing in your life that should be outrageous, it should be the trust that people have in you. And I love that concept, and I'll do something with that going forward. But we partnered up, and the idea was, how do we take this foundational idea of trust that was predicated on improving the performance, say, leaders and organizations might have, and add to it an element of how does high trust relationships affect your health and well-being. So I recruited an amazing physician, Dr. Amira Mansfield, and we started on that road together, did our research, and crafted a real evidence-based training program that's now known as the Trust Transformation.
I like this book.
Yep. So we launched the training program in 2017. It quickly became a real difference maker for people, and it also began showing us all of these other benefits that happen when you are intentional and mindful about building trust. And to this date, I'd say 7,000 of their employees have gone through this program. We consistently get feedback about the impact that it has in their lives personally and professionally. I want to make clear that the intent as we go in and work with groups, and as this program rolled out, was to address it as a whole person experience. That it's not just the expectation that you're going to do this at work. You got to do it at home. You got to build trust at home. You have to really be intentional with, if you're married, your spouse, your kids, your family. If you're not good at home, you're not going to be good at work. And so that journey took us up to the pandemic, and during that time, we got to see a lot of really powerful things occur, because Omira and I would host Teams calls with anyone that had gone through the program as kind of a support group during the worst of the pandemic, and we got to listen to and watch these folks share their stories and how they were contending with the challenges, the problems, and the hurt that was occurring during that time. And so coming out of that, there was a clear idea in my mind that there's such a broader audience for this. And so the publishing team and Dr. Mansfield and I worked on getting the manuscript ready in 2022 as the pandemic subsided. And I was presented with kind of where the organization and the communication team was going to go. I really didn't see myself in that chapter anymore, and so I left. I've partnered up with my friends and colleagues, Mark Hayes and others over at the Stockworth Institute and Stockworth Studios, and now what I do is as an executive coach is I'll come in and train a leadership team using the Trust Transformation Program. Work and coach with them, help them adopt what we call a trust contract. And that trust contract is a commitment that they make, similar to the mission, the vision, the values, service standards that they've committed to. But it defines how we're going to prioritize trust in our relationships as a point of both inspiration and accountability. And so for the last 2 years now, I've been doing that work and working with some amazing organizations, some incredible leaders, and just continuing to grow that. And the next chapter is to launch that into an online community where many, many, many more people can access the content, the information, and really transform their lives through the power of trust.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean that's a great.
There's the short story.
Yeah, a great short story. Oh, hey, you have the experience, and that's I think what a lot of people will resonate with, and a lot of people will learn from.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy to hear the trend, because I lived a part of that transitional period, that transformational period to get to where you are today.
Absolutely.
I was part of the outrageous trust laboratory,
that's
per
right.
se. The laboratory where, and it really resonated with me even when back then is, about relationships and about building that trust, because people now I'm in business and people buy people.
Yeah.
People don't buy services or products. And
That's
so, I feel like trust is absolutely, a huge aspect to a character of a person and a business owner itself. My question now is based on your story, it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like, either God has led you during periods of change, during periods of big transformations, such as Dean Jarley coming into the college and transforming that, you starting within the agency space, and then you even going in when the rebranding of Advent Health, when they were Florida Hospital, and then the whole, how do you consistency between internal and external communications? How do you feel like, was it God who led you in those directions, or what sort of led you to seek that? Because it is chaotic in a way, right? When anything change is chaotic, it's can you tell me more about, that?
Yeah, sure. I have come to accept that my calling is helping people in transition.
Okay.
And you're right. As you map out the journey I was on, and continue to be on, God has put into my path incredible opportunities to do those things. And I even think about, with Dean Jarley, right? His whole mission coming in the door was to transform the College of Business and make it into something significantly different from an experiential standpoint. When I was hired to open what was called Volusia Medical Center in Orange City, Florida, we were transforming a community that had never had access to convenient health care and had to drive 30, 40 minutes to get anywhere to provide care. And then the recent time that I had at Advent Health, and you have to make yourself available, right? And so in our faith, you have to then say, I'm going to submit myself to your will, Lord. You will guide my steps in doing that. And I think it's important to say, I haven't always done a good job of that. I've screwed it up many times.
Yeah.
And so part of the lesson in the trust transformation is you can restore trust with yourself, because that's a big part of it, right? You have to that trust that you build with yourself is critically important. So if I'm going to hear His command, if I'm going to hear His desire, if I'm going to hear His direction in my life, if I'm not creating some kind of routine around that and prioritizing that in my life, I'm going to go off the rails, right? And that's true about any aspect of our life. That goes to the way we learn, that goes to the way that we build our relationships. And one of the most important lessons that I want people to take out of the trust transformation is that idea of intentionality. It's not by accident that relationships are built on trust. It's based on that great intentionality and that mindful approach to building it. And so, as you asked about how has my career really unfolded, it's been when I'm plugged into that, I'm led into the right direction, and I'm led to the work that is most meaningful, both to me and to the kingdom. Right, and so being able to have that presence of mind is absolutely important, and being ready to answer the call when it comes. And sometimes it's felt like I've jumped into something without a net, and have to be completely locked into faith that it's going to happen. And even in the training program, one of the things that we acknowledge for people to understand is that faith is the highest expression of trust that we have, and it can inspire and motivate and terrify us all at the same time. But when you lean into it, the rewards, it may not be monetary, but they're always going to be there, and it's going to take you to that next place that you need to be.
I love that. That's really cool. Yeah, absolutely. Some things that stuck out to me within there is you've been led to a lot of transitional periods. The way I look at that, and the funniest thing is every time I do these interviews, I start to realize like God is giving me my company name called Next Level Marketing, and partly because like I'm a gamer at heart.
Yeah,
I like leveling up in general, but
I spent a little too much time at Halo over the years, so I do understand.
Yeah. But for you, I mean, the couple things that stood out to me is just in general, it's like you're being led to help leaders per se transition, which I look at that like leveling up. So you're leveling up leaders through a period of help self-reflection, of trusting in themselves. Then overall, what you were saying is faith is the largest trust you can have, because I wouldn't be here without God, and I wouldn't be here, and I would not even be walking in this way without His trust in Him and directing those steps, and just going down the fire or the nice path or whatever path He puts you down. And so that's what it sounds like to me, is He's led you to really, really hone in on that. So
well, there's another part of my story that I haven't shared yet that really puts things in perspective as to why I'm doing what I do now. And it happened, for argument, just 2,076 days ago. Not that I'm counting. That's 5 years for those that may be wanting to know the math. It was May 25th, 2019. My wife and I were having a typical Friday night We had gone to dinner at our favorite little local place that's actually right across the parking lot here at Hurricanes.
Oh, Hurricanes, yeah.
Had dinner together, and then over to the Home Depot up the street to get my honey-do list items for the weekend. Came home and sat down on the couch and watched a movie on Netflix, and Kim went off to bed. I said I wanted to stay up and watch another movie, and I fell asleep on the couch. Typical Friday night. And at 2 a.m. I wake up with the worst pain I'd ever felt in my life. It was like somebody had punched a hole in my chest and was squeezing the life out of my heart. I ran in the bedroom. I woke Kim up and said, "You've got to get me to the emergency room. I think I'm having a heart attack." We jump in the car, and as we're driving out of the neighborhood, I have a stroke. And so I become completely non-responsive. And we get to the hospital over here in Altamont Springs, and the nursing team has to come out, drag me out of the car, get me up on a table. I don't know how he figures it out, but one of the nurses determines that what I'm having is not a heart attack. It's an acute aortic dissection. And in layman's terms, that means that my heart is splitting open, and I have to get into surgery immediately or I will bleed out. And so they fly me from Altamont to the hospital in Orlando, Advent Health Orlando. And a team works on me for 6 hours. And in that 6 hours, they are replacing the entire upper arch of my aorta with synthetic material because it's essentially gone. They finish the surgery, and it's determined that the best way for me to recover now is through an induced coma, because my body needs to slow as way down as it can. And even then, Jonathan, the prognosis, the whispers around the hospital, which is where I worked, by the way, at the time, was that there was no prognosis for a positive outcome.
Wow.
That if I survive, and I don't think I said this earlier, but the survival rate on an acute aortic dissection like this is about 2 to 5%.
Yeah.
That if I survive, there's definitely going to be long-term brain damage, because there were periods of time where there was just a lack of oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
And so by putting me in a coma, they're trying to give me whatever I can to get through it. And it was a week. So for an entire week, nobody knows what's going on. Nobody has, I mean, they can do the best they can to monitor everything, but that, it was just up to my body and God and everything else. And I'll tell you that there were these little miracles that happened just in that first few hours of the experience. But all that to say, I was in the hospital then for another month, and then I was out of work for 6 months on leave, and back to work. As interestingly enough, I had one more surgical procedure done, and my first day back to work was in March of 2020.
Okay. Wow.
Almost day one of the COVID pandemic coming to life.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Okay.
And then for the next 2 years, it's all COVID.
Yeah.
The reason I share that and really want people to understand, when I woke up, I had all my faculties, and I was able to start that journey of recovery.
Okay.
So the story in itself is one of mission, all the people that were committed to care for me and do what they needed to do, and just poured into every aspect of getting me there. Medicine, I had access to incredible people, the surgeons, the nurses, the doctors, everybody in that path was there, and miracles. So mission, medicine, and miracles are really the core ideas of my story. When you confront your mortality,
Mm-hmm.
and you truly face, that it could end tomorrow, you will go through that change. And for me, that change said, I haven't been the man I should be.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've been blessed with a great career. I've worked with wonderful people. I've done good work. But I really felt like, and I was challenged by not living up to the standards that God expects me to live up to in all aspects of my life. Not being necessarily the husband or the father, coworker or the friend that I needed to be. And so it really required me, to your earlier, to your company name, to level up my life in every way. And so it's redefined my purpose, which is to love people, to be grateful, to give generously, and to make a difference. And that drives everything I do. So if I'm presented with an opportunity and it doesn't fulfill that purpose in my life, I can easily say no to it. And it, while it sounds counterintuitive, and the experience was painful and difficult, and I wouldn't wish it on anybody else, ultimately, it's become the best thing that ever happened to me.
Absolutely. Because
it put me in the place that I need to be to do the work that I need to do.
That's amazing.
And so I wouldn't wish it on anyone. I would encourage, though, everyone to take that self-reflection of confronting your mortality. In fact, I carry, we all have, there's an idea of the totem, right? Something that you have that you keep around you that reminds you of what is most important, right?
Yeah.
So one example would be a wedding ring, if you're married, or to that extent. And one of the totems that I have with me all the time is a little coin that reminds me. It says memento mori, which is the idea that you could leave this life tomorrow. So, I read a lot about some of the Stoic ideas of life, and so having that, having that mindset that if the day ended, did I pour into the things that mattered most throughout that day, drives your decision making, and you're consistent in that, you're going to get more out of the day and be able to give so much more in what you do.
That is amazing. I love that, and I'm very blessed to have the opportunity to see you. Right? Let's just put it that way. To see you here and to be with you.
Yeah. When I'll get on a call, or I'll go to a meeting, and someone will say, "Hey, it's good to see you," and my response is, "It's great to be seen."
Yeah, it's great to be seen. Exactly.
And another layer to that somebody said to me was, "It's good to be seen. It's better than being viewed."
Yeah. Absolutely.
Anyways.
Yeah. So I'm really happy that that told that story and really I could relate for sure. But it's more about your 5 to 2% more live rate or survival rate.
Yeah.
Right. That's extremely.
Oh, it's crazy.
That's a good. I mean, if that's like. Yeah, that's really, really poor opportunities there.
So, just to give you an example, when I meet a doctor for the first time, and you can imagine, you go through an experience like that, I now have so many physicians that I will come into contact with or work with. When I meet a physician for the first time, and we'll sit in a room, do introductions, they'll go away, they'll read my file, and they'll come back, and they stare at me like I'm a unicorn in the zoo. And I have to acknowledge to them, yes, I understand. It's quite odd that I'm still here.
I mean, it's evident to me, but for you, do you feel like God had a hand in that?
Oh, dude, yeah, I'm not here without it. It's so. For example, when you talk about where he showed up, I would tell anybody who's having chest pains to call 911.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that just makes sense. I didn't do that. I ran in the bedroom, I got my wife up, and we drove to the emergency room. If we'd have called 911, likely would have happened is it would have taken them some time to get there. They would have had to, they would have done some sort of workup on me while I'm there, and I probably would have bled out before I got to the emergency room.
Wow. Okay.
Right? And then when we get to the hospital, how quickly that nurse recognized that I had no feelings in my arms and legs, because I can't tell them that.
Right.
I'm stroked out. I can't respond.
Right.
And so they were able to get me there. The surgeon that did the work on me, when I woke up and the nurses would come in and talk to me, to a person, every nurse said that Clay Burnett was the surgeon you needed for that procedure.
Wow.
He's the guy
Okay.
for that. He left his practice in Advent Health a week later. So if it happens a week later, I don't get Clay Burnett.
Wow.
Now that's not to say that there weren't other people there, but I was told that time and time again.
Wow.
That he was the guy. And I could go on and on about all these little things that happen that if not for that specific thing at that specific moment being there, and I don't, it's not, nothing is by chance. It's all by providence.
Yeah.
And so pouring into that, understanding that, certainly strengthens faith. And look, one of the best books I read coming out of it was a book by Lee Strobel called A Case for Miracles. And if you're familiar with Lee, who wrote A Case for Christ and a lot of other great books that help people sort of pull the curtain back and look into things that are beyond our understanding. And miracles are one of those things, right? And you don't always get the outcome you want. You don't always get the end of the story that you expect, and so I hold that very dear and precious in my life, because I've watched and lived with people that didn't get that outcome, and so if I'm really going to cherish it, I need to lean into it and I need to honor it.
Absolutely.
When that happens, and do the things that I know are going to benefit and help others.
That's amazing. And and just the fact that God led that way to you to have that situation and you to be here today is extremely powerful of His power and glorifying Him itself. So I do believe that you're and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that you're pretty much fearless at this point. Your confidence is so strong.
I do appreciate that.
Yeah.
And God has been in a position to allow me to exercise that from time to time, and yet I struggle with fear and doubt every day. Every day. There are things that I need to be doing that I don't. And so I'm required to pour into figuring out how.
Right. Yeah.
And so I surround myself with people to hold me accountable. One of the things I would encourage business owners and anyone in life, but particularly as we're talking in this realm, don't allow yourself to get isolated. Isolation is the breeding ground for sin, for letting those ideas of fear and doubt foster into sometimes overwhelming sense of dread or challenge. And so I seek out. I mean, I just had this conversation with my wife this week. There are things I'm working on now that they are not what I've done in the past. They are not what I'm comfortable with. They are not what I've built my career on. They are completely different. They require a completely different set of skills. I've described in the past that early in my career, somebody made a comment to me that it's better to be the kingmaker than to be the king. And the idea behind that is the person that helps work behind the scenes for somebody else. And in the public relations business, that's primary to us. We work with our clients. If we're in the consulting side and if we're in the corporate side, we work with the executives to help to move them forward. And now I'm in a place where I've been called to a certain ministry or work or business that's going to require me to step out and be front and center. It's not my game.
Right.
And so I'm having to learn a new game. And anytime we learn a new skill, we're awkward and we're frustrated. And I studied martial arts for the majority of my adult life, and I know you have as well. And I achieved a 5th degree black belt in Taekwondo. Well, day one, when I walked in the very first martial arts school I did, which was a different style or technique, but the similarity is I couldn't do any of the forms, and I couldn't do any of the moves, and I couldn't do any of the, and so if you can't commit to being terrible at something first to become a master at something, then you're never going to move out of your the place that you're at today. You're never going to move past that. So I have to lean into my faith. I have to put that at the top of my prayer list. I have to be willing to subject myself to the humiliation of the failure that I'll have in the first 10 times I try something. Maybe this week, I launched my first Instagram reel to talk about a community I'm trying to build, and I put this video out there, and it's terrible. I mean, I don't know that others would judge it that way, but for me, it felt awkward. It felt difficult. It took me forever to get it edited. All of those things. But I've got to work that now into a discipline of knowing that that's the only way it's going to move forward. And doing those things.
It reminds me of a quote that I read recently is all work works, right? And there's a thing in the Bible where it says, in all labor there's profit. I think it's in the Proverbs itself. But all work works. It either works for you or works on you. And so, it sounds like you're going through that period of, learning and growing, even at this stage. And it's after, you've received that opportunity to live the second life, live this additional grace from the Lord, and and share, because He can use you in the best way possible. When you are, at the front, and you are what I wrote is like, you are here to help. This is my interpretation. You're here to help level people up, level leaders up, business owners up, through trust, through self-reflection, through ultimately faith. Right, and so I think that you have a high calling for that.
The second book that I read after I was released from the hospital and living in that 6-month period was called Second Mountain by David Brooks. And the concept in the book is if we look at our lives and we reflect on it, we spend the first half climbing a mountain that is all about achievement and recognition and growth and reward, right? That, that's the career path. At some point, we will fall off of that, or something will happen to us, and we end up at the bottom of the mountain again. And so now we start to climb that second mountain. And if we've learned a lesson through whatever that incident is, for whatever that fall is, whatever that tragedy is, that second mountain becomes about legacy and a commitment to something higher or bigger than ourselves. And that is a transformational process that I would encourage everybody to think about. And if you can avoid having to fall off of the mountain to learn it, congratulations. But even in the day-to-day, we have those trips, we have those issues and incidences that are going to knock us down a little bit. And so what do you do with that? What do you do with that lesson that to your point, the work works on you as much as it works for you in doing that?
I love it. I have so much more to learn. I think we're all learning. Right? We're all learning based on what we were saying exactly. So
it's back to the Proverbs. The beginning of wisdom is in the fear of God, right? And knowing Him for who He is, because that if you understand who He is, it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming, and we can't understand it, right?
Correct. So I had all these questions. I didn't get through them. I don't want to take up any more of your time. If anything, I feel like we should, maybe you be open to another episode or another time that we could talk about this.
No, listen, absolutely. I'll leave you with one thing, and it speaks to another totem that I have, right? And the totem, it comes from my daughter. So my wife and I have been married 35 years this year, And so we have 4 kids. 3 of them are boys. Those are my oldest 3, 30 years old, 27, and 25. And then my daughter is our youngest. And so if you're a father and you have a daughter, there's just this completely different kind of relationship that you have. So I came home one Friday night, and when she was 5 years old, Faith had completely turned our living room, or actually our dining room, into a bracelet factory. And so she had all these little beads, and she was making these things. And for anyone that knows, bracelet beads are just one level down from Legos in terms of the damage they do to your feet when you step on them on the floor at night. Okay. And so it's an OSHA violation.
Okay. Yeah.
But she made this bracelet for me, and she was so excited. And she said, "Daddy, will you wear this bracelet?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." And so it was Memorial Day weekend. We went to a church picnic, we went to the mall, went to the movies, and everywhere we went, I technically became show and tell.
Nice.
Faith would show off the bracelet and tell everybody about making it.
Nice.
So fast forward to Tuesday morning, I have to get up and go to work. And back then, Jonathan, we had to get up and put a suit and tie on to go to an office somewhere for our work. You know, that sounds like ancient history, I'm sure, to many of those in the audience.
Yeah.
But I get back home that night, and I'm helping Kim in the kitchen. We're working on getting dinner up on the table, and Faith is still making bracelets, and she comes running into the kitchen, and she's got another bracelet. And I'm thinking to myself, I've only got so much arm to give to your cause. And she says to me, "Daddy, if you didn't like the other bracelet, will you wear this one?" Well, I had taken the bracelet off to go to work and left it on my dresser.
Okay.
And so in her 5-year-old mind,
wow,
the only thing she could figure out was, I must not like it.
Wow.
So I put the bracelet back on, and I wear it every day, and this is it.
That's the bracelet.
This is it, right? Well, this is actually version 3.0.
Version 3.0.
We've had some issues.
Okay.
A few breaks, and one got lost in all of the chaotic life I was living when I was in the hospital.
Makes sense.
But I wear it every day for 2 reasons. One, I told her I would. Right? So we try to keep our word. We try to keep our commitments. And 2, and what I would want everybody watching this to take away, it reminds me that everything that I say or do is either contributing to or taking away from the trust that somebody has in me.
I love that.
It's all the little things.
It's all the little things.
Trust is not one big sweeping thing that you turn a switch on. It is comprised of all the little things that you say and do every day.
I love that. That's a great way to end this, and that's a great way to sort of encapsulate how does somebody like build trust, and it's like through everyday's actions.
That's it.
You know, that's exciting. One thing I like to do also on this podcast, if you're open to it, you know, if you could look at the camera and say your name in a fun way, if you want, you know, say your name and then just say, "This is God's Business Podcast."
Okay.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'm Roy Reid. I'm co-author of the book, The Trust Transformation. I work with CEOs and leaders to build better trust in their relationships so that they get better results. And this is God's podcast.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah, man.
Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, it was fun.
That's good. I have literally all these questions, but I think it'd be cool to have a second episode. I learned so much. I absolutely learned so much.
Well, and I'll tell you, something to think about when you do your promotion on it.